So today we are going to use our Flowpath software. I have an idea of what I want to draw. I have a few notes over here on the side of just different sizes that I need. I have a calculator out so I can actually calculate stuff. And basically, I'm just gonna mess around and try to come up with a decent design. The physical things I have here are a caliper and a notepad with basically these same notes that I put up right here in the screen. You don't have to draw anything like this. I'm just going to show you how I do it and hopefully give you some knowledge on what I do with it. So this is our starting area. We know that this is our home. Whenever we home the actual machine, it's going to be put right into this corner. We know that each one of these squares is a 2" by 2", as you can see by that, 2 inches by 2 inches. Anyway, so what I'm going to be making for this demonstration is we're just going to draw up a axle mount for a truck to actually put a shock on. So it needs to be 8 inches from the axle down to the bolt hole. We're doing 1/2 inch bolt hole. The axle is 2.75 inch round, and then the width of the actual shock is 1.5 inches wide. So we know it's got to be 8 inches from top to bottom. So if we count this, 2, 4, 6, 8, will be up here somewhere. I like to draw reference lines, and these are just purely for my reference, so I can figure out exactly where to put things. And that first line wasn't very good, so I'm going to erase it, and I'm going to start anew from, I'll just start with 3.13. So I'm now typing in the coordinates down here on the bar. 3.13 by 12 by 0. And that's going to be our starting point. So let's put our starting point up there. And so we're going to do 3.13 by 0 by 0 will actually bump us, and it will now automatically finish our line down here where we want it. So that should be exactly perfectly straight. And now we have that point up there. So using that point, I'm going to use that as our center. Maybe. There's our center. And I could just drag this out and try to get it exactly 2.75 inches. But instead, we need to divide the 2.75 in half. So we have 1.375. So on here, we still haven't done anything. And we're going to go down into this box, and we're going to do 1.375. We hit enter, and that will automatically draw our 2.75 size. So I'm actually going to delete it. I'm just going to bump it up to 1.39. Give me some tolerance in there. 1.39, hit enter, and suddenly we have our 2.75 size plus some tolerance, 2.779. So 2.78, which should be more than enough tolerance for the part that we are making. So I don't need this top part, so I'm just hitting delete. It deletes it. So now I have where the axle will actually sit in. This will all make sense towards the end of this video. So the material I'm using, or going to be cutting this out of, is a 1/4 inch steel. And so I know that if I make this 1/4 inch, it'll be the exact width of my metal. 1.49. So 1.49 and 7.1280 and 0. So I just clicked on my line drawing again, and I'm doing coordinates. Hopefully it should start it right around in this area. There we are. I just hit enter and it popped it right in there. So this part doesn't need to be precise for what I'm doing. It's just a guesstimation. So I'm just going to click somewhere. Oh, let's click right here. That's where we're putting my line. I'm going to end up rubber banding it. So if you come over here to this side, click the rubber band tool, click on the one line, and you can then kind of bow it out however you want, however you wish. I'm just going to round it off so there's a nice distance between that and that. So come back to here, we know 8 inches down from the bottom of this guy down to the top of my hole over here that I haven't done yet needs to be exactly 8 inches. And so I'm actually gonna select this guy. Oops. Select that guy, select that guy, select that and that. And we're gonna, actually I'm just gonna select it all. We're gonna use the move function to move the whole entire thing up. And the reason I'm doing this is just so I can get exactly 8 inches. So we're just gonna bump it up to there. And then deselect everything. So up here is our actual selections. So we can select singular item. This deselects it. This selects all the same speed. So if I wanted to draw another line right here, and then I wanted that line to be a different speed, you come down here and it changes the speed. It also changes the color. So then if I drew a square over here, that was that. If I clicked on that, we do 20%, hit OK, it selects everything that's 20%. We deselect that, we do that same thing. Say we do 40%, we click that, it selects everything that's 40%. So we deselect it again. We don't need any of these, so we're gonna delete them. Delete, 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 delete. Then we got select contour entities. That's going to select all of these, but will not select straights. Traverse lines, that's further on when you actually have traverse lines after you've auto-pathed. And then cutting lines are just these cutting lines, so if you have an auto path, it does not select the traverse line. And then last and not least, and the one I use probably more than anything, is select all. It selects everything. And the deselect button. So I'm going to come over here and I need my reference line to be a little bit longer. So I come over here, we get our split/expand tool. We click on the line and it lets us pull down that line all the way, and now it's one continuous line. So to get exactly 8 inches from the bottom of that all the way down right there, we have 2.9161. So we go 2.9161. By 0.5714 by 0. Hit enter. Oh, I'm not selected on a tool. And so it's trying to snap, so I'm going to take off these snaps. We're going to click on this again. Since I don't have snaps on, it will not snap directly to that, but that's okay. We'll get as close as we can, and I'm holding Alt in order to kind of move the screen around. Just Alt, and then you just left click and drag, and it moves everything around for you. So we're going to drop down exactly to 8.0 or somewhere around there. And on the bottom of the screen you can see the X, Y, and Z axis. So we know what we're trying to figure out is our Y axis right now, which is 0.5510. So if I click on this and I type in 0, 0.55, 0, it'll start our line over here. And then we're just going to put an arbitrary endpoint of 0.00, 0.55, 0.55, 0. We hit enter. It moves our line over there. I forgot that I have it selected on 20% speed, so we're just going to move everything back to 40%, and that way it should just give us that. So now we know from the top of this line to the bottom of this guy is exactly 8 inches. We're going to move our snaps, snap to line, oops, snap to nearest, and snap to endpoint back on, and that way we can look at that, and it's 8.0459, which is close enough to 8 inches for me. So if we measure a 1/2 inch from our hole, or I guess we could do 0.25 down from that. 0.25 is at y-axis 0.2967. So if we go 2.9161, comma 0.2967, comma 0. That should start our circle here. And then we know we need a 1/2 inch hole. which with these circles you have to divide it by 2 in order to get a full hole, because you're going from the center to the side, and obviously there's 2 ways to go. So let's clear that out. We go 0.5 for ½ inch divided by 2 equals 0.25. So on that we go 0.25. We hit enter, but I'm going to give myself a little bit of tolerance, go 0.26, hit enter, and now we should have a slightly over a ½ inch hole. So measure that, we're at 0.5196, basically 0.52, which is our 5 inch or our ½ inch hole with a little tolerance. And we're off on the top just a hair, but that is totally okay. So now I'm just going to select it all. I'm going to come over, hit the move option again, just to move this up, and that way I can create a bigger radius underneath this to create the bottom of our mount. So we're at 0.251, 0.26. So I'm just going to make another reference mark for me. And all of these reference marks will end up being, they'll end up being deleted. 0.2567, which bumps us into our y-axis. That's 1.7228. So we hit this, we go 1.7228, and that's close enough. We're just going to pull it out a little bit, and then we're going to extend it out from the other side. Perfect. So now I have to figure out how big of a radius to put underneath here to make it worthwhile. And we have a ½ inch hole here. So if we do a 1 inch radius underneath there, we'll only have a 1/4 of an inch on the bottom here. And a 1/4 of an inch doesn't feel like very much. So about right there, that's a 1/4 of an inch. So I think if we do 1.25 inches, so we click our circle function again, we click right in the center of that. That's why I did my cross way, so I can figure out where my center is. And then if I do 1.25, this will give us 1 1/4 inch. We hit enter. That will, oh, that's why. And again, I did not divide it by half. So we do that again. If we want 1.25, we hit that, we do 0.75, because that is half of 1.25. And there we are. We have a solid, let's see, ½ inch underneath our hole. I think that's perfect. So then we're going to come up, delete the upper portion, and at this point I believe this and this are worthless, and so is this. So right from this, I'm going to go straight up with a line. So a lot of this, like, I'm just going off of my basic thought process of what I want it to look like. This is totally up to whatever your design is. It doesn't have to be something fancy, it doesn't have to be artistic, it can just get the job done. So looking at the y-axis or the x-axis, we're looking at 3.70. So we're going to do that. We're going to do 3.70 by, we'll just bump it all the way up to 15 inch by 0. We hit enter. That should go straight up and be exact, perfectly straight. So now I'm going to click on these, and I'm going to move them. I'm going to move them straight over. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but I don't really know how, so I'm just going to use my way. So I zoom in, you can see this one has a little bit of space over here. We zoom out, and this guy has a little bit of a space too, so we're going to click on that. We're just going to slightly move it up just so it meets that line. It's not really that important, but it's going to make me feel better. So the reason I did that is this line now is directly in line with this, and so I can now copy that. Oop, and I almost didn't catch myself. So if I had copied that and started moving it, it still would have, these were still selected, so it would have still moved those up. So I'm going to deselect everything. Now I'm in the select mode. I'm going to select this 1/2 inch circle that I have. I'm going to come up here, click the copy, and then I'm going to paste it. Now I'm going to zoom in, and it can't really tell where it pasted. It pastes it right on top of whatever you copied. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to move it straight up. We know it's a 1/2 inch, and I want these 1/2 inch spacing, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to paste again. I copied it again, I guess. Now I pasted it again, and now I'm going to move that straight up. And so now I'm just creating 1/2 inch increments. Paste that again. Since I didn't copy it this time and I just pasted it, it came up in the middle where I copied the last one. We're going to move it right up. Paste. And the nice thing about doing this with your snaps on is it will snap onto that line, so they're perfectly in a line, and so I can just keep pasting them, copying and pasting them as far up as I want, and they should stay in the perfectly straight line, which is very important when it comes to trying to get stuff super accurate. The plan for these is they have to be lined up perfectly for our shock bolt to go through it. If they are not perfectly lined up, then it'll never work. And so need it to be as accurate as possible. So we're going to copy that guy, paste it again, and we're just going to move it up. I don't even know how many bolt holes I need. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do 5 total. And paste. So now I have 9 holes, but what we're going to do is we're going to deselect. We're going to come in. We want to keep this bottom hole, but this hole, this hole, this hole, this hole, are all going to be deleted. So I selected all of those. Now I just hit the delete button. They disappear. And now I have 1/2 inch holes that are spaced exactly 1/2 inch apart. Maybe not exactly, but as close to exact as I need. So 0.5187. We move up 0.5274, 0.3, 0.5157. So they're within range of what I need it to be. So now we're going to come over. We're going to take this line. We're going to delete it. That was purely just to... Oh, actually, that's right. We're going to keep that line. We're going to move these two over just a tiny bit more. Also, another thing, if you are selecting items, if you end up clicking on too many items, if you right-click on one that you've already clicked, it will deselect it. So you can see there, I select it left-click, and I deselect it with a right-click. So we're going to zoom in again, and I want a bit of space between this vertical line and this radius. So I clicked our move button again, and I'm just sliding it over X amount. It doesn't have to be precise for what I'm doing, but it ended up being about almost 1/4 inch, which is perfect. Now I zoom in, I can see that those are still a little bit high, so I'm going to hit the move button again. I'm going to click again, and I'm going to just drag it down to where it matches that line. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Deselect everything. And now I'm going to take this line. I'm clicking on the split expand tool. Up at this top end, I'm going to click on it, bring it down to this line, click on it, and now you can see I have 2 lines. I'm going to click on that, delete that. Click on this guy, delete it. I don't think I need this guy anymore. He's just going through the holes, so we're going to delete that too. Delete that. And now things are starting to really kind of take shape. So now I just need to move a line from here down to here, which I come over to my line tool, and it is snapping to the end of that, so I could click on that and move it down to click on that where it snapped right to the end, and that would work. It looks kind of goofy with this radii, so my thought is I'm actually going to click from about here and run it down to somewhere around right here. And then let me delete this old one. As you can see, now we have a little too far of a radius. Sometimes it will automatically split the line or the radius or whatever you did wherever you hit it. Sometimes it won't, so sometimes this line will actually stay solid all the way up, and you actually have to come in and split the line yourself. Luckily this time it did it on its own, so we're just going to click on that, and with clicking on and both of them are lit up, we can come over and it gives us an option of, do we want the arc, do we want the line, do we want none of them, or do we want both of them? I want the arc, just the end of that arc. We're going to click on that, and we're going to hit delete, and now that line comes straight into the arc. So we're going to move all the way up, and we're going to clean up this up here. As you can see, it actually did that automatically over here too. So we're going to click on that. As you see, I clicked right in the corner, so it has all three. It has the arc on the bottom, the line, and then the arc on the top. We want the arc on the bottom, hit delete, and now we have a really nice flow of what we're doing. So now you can kind of see exactly what we're trying to get at. And this line no longer is needed. Oh, actually, this undo button is a button that I use frequently because I constantly am ruining or deleting stuff that I want. So we want to keep this section and this section. The way to do that is you come over right above your split tool and you do create intersection. And so you zoom in, and we actually have overlap right there already. So we're going to click on right in the corner there, and we're going to click all. And now you can see that created a nice intersection for us. So we're going to click there, delete it. We're going to zoom in, delete that little trail or tail that we have there. Then we're going to come back up here, create intersection. And sometimes the create intersection doesn't work. I don't know why. I'm sure it makes sense to someone, but sometimes I click create intersection and it won't work and it won't work. And so I end up doing expand or split, and I will show you how to do that in a second. Actually, I'll show you how to do that right here. So say we clicked our create intersection and it still wasn't creating that intersection. I would then come to our split / expand, and I'd come down here and I'd just expand that up past the line right here. And now we have the ability to create intersection. We have an actual four-way intersection rather than just a T. So we're going to click all, and now we have 4 separate things. And we just hit delete to clean that up. Click on this, delete, click on that, delete. Now we just need to do it again for this guy. And as you can see right there, I clicked create intersection. I clicked right in the corner. I clicked all of them, but it still doesn't split that line. So now we're going to have to expand this guy up and then create intersection again with all of them, and for some reason it worked. So be conscientious of what you're doing. If you do too many things, I think you have 5, maybe 8 undos you can do. But if you end up doing 15 lines and then realize, oh crap, one of those 15 ago I needed, you try to hit back or undo, you only have a certain amount and you are out of luck. So that's one side of the bracket that I need. Basically drew the whole entire thing in, I don't know, 20 minutes, maybe longer. But now I need 2 sides. I need both sides. But I actually want to create some tabs over here so it kind of slides in together and just cleans up nicely. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select it all, and then I'm going to rotate it just to make things easier for me. So I clicked on this rotate button. Alternatively, I could come up to the draw or the edit, and I could click rotate entities up here. It's the same as this. And then you click on the screen once, click again, and then wherever you drag your mouse will rotate. And the further away you go, the smaller it'll do. The closer you go, the bigger it'll do. So you kind of have to, it's one of those mess with it and play with it, and hopefully you just figure it out. So I'm trying to make the far left side as straight as possible. And as you can see, it kind of varies a little bit, so I'm going to rotate it again. Right there. Now that was a little bit too far. Right there. Now I feel like that is as straight as I possibly can get it by my eye. So I'm going to zoom in, and my thought is, I know I'm going to do 0.25 thickness. And so if we measure from this line in at 0.25, and I actually want it a little bit deeper just for tolerances. So we're going to do as close to 0.26 as we can. So we're going to do, on our x-axis, 1.30. So we're going to click on this and do 1.30 by 0 by 0. That's going to start our line. And then we're going to do 1.30 by 15 by 0. The 15 is arbitrary. It's way up high. It's just to make my line perfectly straight going through it. This is another reference line that I'm probably going to end up using as parts of it. But for the most part, it's going to be deleted again. Like I said, I like to give myself reference lines. You could reference off of the actual grid pattern it has here. I like these because it can actually, what's it called? Snap. It can snap to the line, and then I know exactly where I'm going. So, came over, I grabbed my tape measure again, I click on that line, and we're just doing a double check. So 0.2483 at the top end, and at the bottom end we're at 0.25. So that line is straight, but my bracket line is not perfectly straight. So as you can see, this reference line that I just put in, it's not actually selected after you do that. So, but the rest of it still is selected. So I can come over here, click our rotate button again, click on that. We're going to go really far out to kind of give us a really shallow move. And see how that did. It looks like it pivoted it too much. But, oops, that's not what I wanted. We'll come and measure it. So 0.263 at the top, at the bottom 0.22. So that's way too much. So we're going to rotate it again the other way just a bit. Just a bit. But I'm sure there's a lot better way to do this. I just don't know how. So now we're at 0.236 at the bottom and 0.237 at the top. So that means it's as straight as I can get it with my eye. So I'm going to just move it over a tiny bit. Click the move button. Click. And we only need it to be just a hair. So I just moved it a hair. Now we're at 0.27 at the top. 0.27 or 26-ish at the bottom, which is awesome for me. So now, since I have both of those lines, I'm going to deselect everything, and I'm going to come over to our line drawing, and I'm just going to draw some lines to where they seem good. So from there, right over, we'll try to do about an inch. It doesn't really matter, but we'll try and get it to exactly 1 inch. So 1.19. So we come down here. Oh, 1.19 was our x-axis, not our y-axis. And that line's not even remotely close to straight. Wow. So it's not super important that we get these perfectly straight, but might as well try. So we started that at 11.0184. And 11.12, whatever. Alright, I can't handle that. So, we're going to start 1.0312. So I'm just going off of the reference numbers at the bottom there, the x-axis. The y-axis is going to be 10.9826, and the z-axis is 0. The reason we're doing 0 on the z-axis on everything is that is our 3D axis, I guess it would be. That is coming out to us, and we do not want anything coming out. We're just drawing in 2D right now. So I have our starting point where my mouse cursor is. Right there. We are going to click enter since we put down the exact coordinates. Right there. It starts, and then we just have to remember where we started or exactly what it was. Oh, and it says right there, so we are just going to do 1.30 by 10.9826 by 0. Now we have a perfectly straight line, which is perfect. So, tape measure, we're going to go 1 inch straight down. So 1.30, 9.98. 1.30 by 9.98. I'm sure there's a lot better way to do this. I don't know it, and that's fine. I know the basics of doing this, and I'm happy with that. 1.03 by 9.98 by 0. There we have perfect 1 inch. So I'm going to do another one down here. And I'm just randomly putting these in. This comes down to your design, or the design you have in your head. I have a basic design of what I want in my head, and I'm just kind of winging it from that. So yeah, let's do right here. So I'm starting right there, and as you can see right here, it tells me where my start point was. So for my finish point, I can just find this line, and I do 1.0347, because that is now my X number, by 3.7026, which is my flat line for my Y, by 0. Hit enter. We have a perfectly straight line. Now I want to do exactly 1 inch up from there. So I got my tape measure button. I'm just going to come up until the tape measure reads 1 inch. That's close enough. So one thing I wish I could figure out, or I wish there was on here, was a reference marker. I wish I could click where my tape measure was and have it tell me exactly where the last measurement was taken. So I have to just kind of remember it, and the way I do that is I read it out. So 1.15, we're going to actually start right here in the corner, measure up to exactly 1, and exactly on this for me is relative 1 inch, about. So 1.03 by 4.70. So 1.03 by 4.70 by 0. Hit enter, it starts my line there. And so our end line is going to be 1.30 by 4.70 by 0. Hit enter. Now we have a line, and that should be 1 inch, as close as we want it. So I'm just planning, we'll just do another one last one, right here. So I'm still on tape measure, so I'm just going to start that there, and we're going to do 1.03 by 6.6796. I'm getting those numbers just from down here, and then I'm just making my endpoint by 0, hit enter, we have a perfect line. And it actually overshot a little bit. That's okay. What we'll do then is just come over here, create an intersection, and delete that line. Now then, let's go back to creating this. We want 1 inch, somewhere around right here. So 1.03 by 7.68, 1.03 by 7.68 by 0, hit enter, and then it is 1.30 by 7.68 by 0, hit enter, creates our line. That one overshot it also. I don't know why it did that. Probably just because I'm not measuring super accurately. Anyway, I did intersection and deleted the little tail that it had. So now we have 1 inch there. I'm going to zoom in on this because it looks like it did it on every single one. So you can delete that tail by creating an intersection, or if you come over to your extend tool, click on the end, bring it back, and it now makes 2 different pieces. And that one's good. That one did the same. So you click on the end, and wherever I click again, it'll create that. If you click on it and come down, it'll actually center it right where that is. It'll make it so you can delete that piece, no problem. So I zoom in a lot, try to see accurateness. So now we have those. We're going to delete this, and we are going to have to create some intersections, create some splits, clean all of this up, create an intersection. Wherever there's the line ends, we're going to just create a nice intersection. So, create intersection. And so we could do a split if we click on this, and then we click again in this area, or we can click on this, pull it forward, and then do a create intersection. I'm just going to click on that, pull it down, and that created our 3-way intersection. We're going to delete that. We have that. So we're going to come down. So I zoom in and zoom out constantly, trying to make sure I know exactly what I'm doing, where I'm deleting, what I'm got going on. And a lot of the times it'll just create intersections on its own, and you don't have to fight anything. Like right here, it created that intersection. I don't have to do anything on that, but I do have to come down here, create this intersection, and now I can delete this one, and then again over here, do that, create another intersection, delete, delete, and now we have one side. So we're going to select all of that, and we're going to move it over, and this is where it gets kind of tricky. So we are going to make our backing plate using this. So we're going to copy this, paste it. We're just going to kind of slide it over just a hair. So in theory, this is going to slide right into that, but we need some tolerance. So we're going to deselect everything. We're going to zoom in. My tolerances aren't that crazy. I don't try to get super specific. I just know that this piece right here needs to fit inside this piece. I would like it to be fairly tight or snug, but I don't want to have to hammer it to go in. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in and I'm going to select this guy. And I'm just going to move him down a tiny bit. We'll do right there. And then, as you can see, I didn't get it very lined up. Here we are. Create that intersection. We're going to delete that, and then we will just extend this guy straight down. So now that connects there. And then again down here. And alternatively, we could just draw a straight line straight over. That's crooked because I can't draw a straight line. Sometimes it's just easier for me just to move stuff instead of trying to draw stuff, because it only works sometimes. So we're gonna move that. It created an intersection there by itself. And we delete all that. So it's important to keep all of your lines connected in the corners and have them, you know, perfectly connected. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to select, this is just so you could see now. I'm going to select all of this. We're going to zoom in. Now I'm going to hit the move. We're going to zoom in, and you can see now it fits inside that without hitting top and bottom. So we're going to move out, and we're going to do that to the next three also. Deselect. And the cancel button is escape. Sometimes I end up hitting delete instead of cancel, or instead of the escape, and I delete whatever I have selected. That's where the undo button comes in handy, and I use it constantly. So keep that in mind. If you do delete something, just hit the undo button real quick. I'm just going to try to burn through moving these around real quick. And the amount I'm moving it is just an arbitrary amount. Like, it doesn't really matter, just as long as there's some space in between it. And that's why I'm not taking that much care with it. I could, if it did matter a lot more, I would be over using this tape measure, measuring in between the two and trying to move it up exactly that much, or paying attention to, you know, the X, Y, and Z of it, and get it 100% perfect by that. But for what I'm doing, I just need a tiny bit of space. And always kind of pay attention. If you have something selected up here and then you move down and select this, if you do not deselect something up here, it will be selected still, and you'll try to move this, and it'll move both of them. And that is a pain when that happens, because then you have to try to remove the thing up top, and if it's exact that you're trying to do, it can really make a lot more work for you. A lot of this comes with just playing with this. That's the more you use it, the better you get at it, and the more things you kind of figure out with it. So come up with an idea of something you want to cut or you want to draw it out and see how well it works. Worst case, it doesn't work that great and you don't use it. But you'll start learning how to use this program more and more. And this program does directly correlate into, say, AutoCAD or the like of that. So it's not a bad idea to learn it and kind of get a good grip of exactly how it works and intricacies. So now I'm selecting that again, and I'm going to come over, and I need it to be exactly opposite, exactly mirrored. And actually, I'm going to select all. I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to mirror this. I just saw a piece that is nothing in there, but for some reason it popped it in there. So I'm going to select it and delete it. Now I'm going to select everything again. There's a couple of those on there, but that's okay. Everything's selected. I'm going to come up to edit, and I'm going to hit the mirror button. Now, you click the mirror button, it seems like it didn't do much of anything, but if you come over, you click on the screen, you move it, suddenly you have a perfect mirror of what you're doing. Let me do that again a little bit closer. So mirror, click on it, we move it, now we have a actual 100% mirror of what we originally did. So click on that. Now we're going to move, for some reason it does put it right on top of your thing. So we're going to move this over. And as you can see, I did not get that perfectly straight. So I'm going to deselect. I'm going to select this again. And we're going to just rotate it until it feels like it is straight. And that looks pretty straight. Just going to move it up. And this is where reference lines also help. So I'm going to move this away, and then I'm going to make a reference line from this corner. Let's see, to somewhere in this vicinity. We're going to do 9.14 by 12.1594. So we're going for our y-axis again by 0. Hit enter. We should have a line that's perfectly straight. And then we'll move this guy again. Bring it in. And if we attach that straight up to the top, we'll just double check that we hit the corner in there. Move this back down. Barely missed it by 1 pixel. Now we have it. And I don't think that's perfectly straight. So we're going to deselect everything. We're going to do a tiny bit of measuring. So from there to there, we're at 3.3620. And from there to there, we're at 3.3743. So I did not get those perfectly straight. So we're going to select those again. and we're gonna just try to rotate them again, just a little bit. We're gonna go far away. Right there. That doesn't look straight either. So we're at 3.37, up top we're at 3.38. So we went a tiny bit too far. And I'm sure there's a perfect, easy way to do this. Oops. I just don't know it. So this is the way I do it. 3.3893, 3.385953, whatever. It's close enough for me. So, and I could just pipe in the coordinates and get this lined up perfect, but I'm okay with what it is. Let's just get that so it's on there. So let's create a split. Right there. I'm just going to delete that tail. So now we have the top of that. And we're going to come down here. And since we know the top is perfectly straight, we can click on that, click on that. That gives us a perfectly straight line. Oh, I guess I should have measured. So this is where we come back to our notes and we go, okay, 1/2 inch bolt hull, we know is here, 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 here. 2.75 axle, there to there. 8 inches from axle to bolt, so from there to there is 8 inches. But the width of the mount has to be 1.5 inches wide. So that means from here to here needs to be 1.5 inches wide. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select this side. I'm going to select my measurement. And we're going to go 1.5. Let's do 1.5384. So now we have our line selected. Now we just need to figure out our x-axis. And we can just move it right over to the x-axis. So 11.9199. So we're going to do move, we're going to do 11.9199 by, and I think we have to start on the bottom here, 2.7485 by 0. We hit enter. Oh, that was our start point. I messed that one up. So we're just going to hit escape, and we're going to do that again, but we're going to click the move button. Oh, not the move button. We're going to click the tape measure button, and we're going to get the 1.5. I don't remember what I said. 1.53. And it's always nice to have a notepad handy so you can write it down. We got 11.9036, and this is just where my mouse is right now. 2.8220 by 0. So that's where we want to bring. So our x-axis, we want to bring it over to 11.9036. So we start here, grab our moving tool, we start there, and then we do 11.9036. by, we're at 2.7485 by 0. We'd hit enter, and in theory, between here and here should be exactly 1.53, or whatever we had it set at. 1.53 with the tape measure on the bottom, 1.5398 on the top, 1.54 at the very top. That is perfect. That is our 1.5 inches plus some tolerance. So we're gonna deselect everything, and then we're gonna just kind of clean up everything. Right there. Clean that up. Move up to the top. Click on that. Click there. Clean that up. And now you can see it's kind of taking shape. So now we're just gonna line everything up a little bit closer for when we're cutting. So from what I have experienced, you need a 0.1, 100,000ths of an inch spacing between your parts. If you want to be safe, go by 0.2 or 0.3. It's better to have too much space than not enough, because it will cut right into your part, and that's not fun. So we're going to select all. We're not done with this drawing yet, but we're getting there. We're going to examine it, and wherever these, so over here right underneath your tape measure button is your examine button. Wherever there is a red box means there is some imperfection or some problem. So we're going to first select all. We're actually going to take that off. We're going to go right below the examine button, click the purge button. This will take away any entities that don't seem right. So we had 4 entities that it erased after we clicked OK. So we're going to select all again. We're going to examine. As you can see now, the boxes that were up here and down here are now gone. So now we just have these random dots inside of our holes, which probably stem from me not having them deleted, or when I copied them. So I'm just going to go through, clean it up on the select tool, drag over that, delete, examine, select tool, we'll select that, we'll select that, we'll select that, there, 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 and if we hit delete, it should delete just those. Examine again, all of those are gone. So now we'll come over here, and we'll just try to select all of these red dots, or red squares I guess they'd be called. Delete, and now we select everything again, we examine, we don't see anything, we deselect it, nothing is out of the ordinary. Select it, let's purge one more time just in case, 0 entities. So what I like to do is I will select it all, and then I'll come down. If you look down here in the corner here under your bar, it'll tell you what each one of these are. So at 20% speed, the cut speed very slow, cut surface is excellent. At 100% speed, it's very fast, but the surface is rough. So that means wherever it's going to cut, it's going to be a really nice clean line, or at 20%, or it's going to be kind of a rough jagged line. Not jagged, but you wouldn't want to rub your finger across it at 100. So I select everything, and I bump it down to excellent cut because I want everything to be as pretty and nice as possible. So we have that finished. I'm going to select this guy, and I'm just gonna try to package this a little bit better. I could just cut it like that, but that does not give us the ample cutting range. So I'm gonna move this over to this side, and I'm gonna just kind of spin this around, move it again, spin it some more, move it, and let's spin it just a hair more. Move it in. And I always grab the tape measure and just kind of measure, make sure I have ample room for where the cutting head, or where it's going to cut. So that's 0.2, 0.2, so that should be good. Nope. And then we're going to try to get it on the same plane as that. So we're trying to flatten out the bottom here, flatten out the top as best you can. And just try to package the whole thing a little bit better. So that way, when you go and cut it, you're wasting as little material as possible. Zoom in on that. 0.2, 0.2. And then if you remember, so I'm just using this move tool. If you remember, right here is our home point. So when we start cutting, it's going to reference from this point. And so we're just going to move this as close to that point as possible without going outside the cutting area. So you can see right here, we're really close. And up here, we're getting close. So this actually is where you could do many different ways. Our supports in our water jet are running this way. And so if you have anything relatively skinny and you cut it the long way, it could fall in. So we kind of want this to be actually turned 90 degrees and move back down. And that way we have braces going this way, and that way when you cut it, it won't fall in. And I'm just going to, I'm going to try to straighten it a little bit, move it down into the corner. As you can see right up here, we're barely coming out. So we're going to click the move button, move it out until it's actually in. So that makes the basis of that first bracket. That'll make it so we cut it all. It'll be exactly 1.5 inches inside to inside, and we have a 1/2 inch where we can now bolt up our shock in this hole or this hole, and it's adjustable, fully adjustable. At this point, if you wanted, we could come in, click on our text function over here, and we will, let's click this fancy, actually that's not very good. So when you go to cut out, these fancy lines look really cool, but then there's a lot of cleanup work you have to do to make them actually work. So it's easier to go with easier looking texts. We'll do bold, engravers. We don't need a 10-inch size. We'll do a 1-inch, see how that goes. We can always resize it. Actually, we will do 3 inches because that way we'll show you how to resize it. So we'll do a 3-inch, And once we hit OK, it'll seem like we didn't do anything. Click OK. And now if you look down in the corner here, it says text, enter the text. So we can put down whatever we want. I'm just going to put my name, Joshua. So nothing's happening yet. We hit enter. Suddenly our name is there. It automatically goes to the move function and automatically selects just your name. So we can then move it wherever we want. Obviously, it is way too big to put inside of our part. So if we come over here, we can go scale or scale by factor. If we click scale by factor, it brings up this menu. And we go, we want it 75% of what it's at now. So we type in 0.75, we hit enter, it drops it down 75%. Now if you want to do it again, you go scale by factor, say we want 25% of that. We go 0.25% of the size it is now. We click enter, or we click OK or hit enter, and now we're at 25% of what it was. That is small enough that it'll go in our part now. I still think it's a little, like, that's too small, it's too detailed. You're going to have overlapping on the cuts with that. So we're going to change the size some more. We can go scale by factor and bump it up to 120%. 1.20%. It'll bounce it up to 120% of that original size. Or this is the one that I actually use normally, just the scale button. So we have our name selected. We click the scale button. And we click on the reference point. We click the second reference point, and now when we move, it'll change the size. However big, however small we want it. So this is good to just do, the size on the fly. So I think that's about a good size, but we're not very centered of that, so we're going to move it again. We're going to center it right there. I like that. So now, that's really cool looking, but one big problem is, if you look at this, it's going to cut the J out. It'll look really cool. It'll come and cut the inner of the O out, and that'll fall away. And then it'll cut the outer of the O out, and that'll fall away. So we're going to end up putting tabs in. You could come over, click on this draw tab line, and then just click wherever you want it. I'm not a big fan of that. I like to just put in my own tabs with a straight line. So I just go to my line drawing, I zoom in, we will put it right about here. And we'll try to match it over here. For what I'm doing, it doesn't have to be super perfect. We're going to deselect everything, and you can see it actually already split my lines pretty nicely. So I can just go in, delete, 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 delete. And now, when it comes, it's going to cut the J, all cool, and then it's going to start cutting the O, and it'll follow this outside line, and then follow and go inside. And then this piece and all of this will stay in, and these will fall away. So wherever there's like a cutoff section, you want to come in, put a tab. So my A, another one. So we're going to zoom in. I'm just going to follow that line. And I only need a little bit of one here, so I'm just going to follow this line to try to keep it aesthetically pleasing. So we're going to come in, delete that. Now we zoom out. Now the A just has this little thing, so this whole thing will stay in. So I like to purge mine constantly, it seems. Just in case every time I draw something, I could accidentally click on something or something else could show up. Then we're going to select everything. We're going to examine it. I kind of tell that this was already going to be an issue, so that's why I wanted to examine it right now. So we zoom in, try to figure out what we have going on. Let's deselect everything. click our selection tool. You can kind of see it overlaps right there. So there's actually a alternative line right there. Click on that, we delete it, and now we don't have that overlap. So we select all, we examine, now we no longer have our little square showing us that there's a problem there. So now we should be able to just cut this whole entire thing. I like that. I think it's good. Oh. And let's actually select everything. We're going to click 20% just to try to get everything up to the same level. So now, and I haven't been doing this, and I definitely should have been doing this. This whole time we should have been saving every few minutes because it's easy to lose your whole entire power. If I had a power outage, I would have lost pretty much everything right here. So we're going to go to Save As. You'll notice they're saving as a DXF file. So we're just going to go to my thumb drive that I have. I'm going to click on, we'll just click right here. We'll do shock mount video, since I'm making a video doing it. So shock mount for the video. Click save. Now that's saved in there. We still need to autopath this before we can actually cut it on the other program. So we're going to select everything. Let's examine it one last time. Everything looks good. Let's purge it one last time. 0 entities were erased. Good. Everything's still selected. Then we come down over here to this autopath order. Click on it and it should autopath everything for us. So it's telling us where it's going to start cutting. So if you examine it, it's going to start right here. And that's my lead in, lead out line. It's going to go in. It's going to cut around on the inside of the hole, which is where we want it. And that means the outside of the hole will be our exact size that we drew it. So the line will be on the inside. And then it'll come out on our lead out, and then it'll traverse, and you can see this traverse line is the perforated line. It'll come in to our lead in, cut around, cut out, traverse, etc., etc. Once it gets to the end of that, it will, you can tell by the arrows, come to the outside of this, which is our lead in, lead out. It'll cut in. And these big arrows are showing that it will cut around the outside of this, all the way around, back out to right here. Then it'll traverse, cut our holes, traverse, cut the outside of this. Then it'll traverse again, and it'll cut my name out. You can see it's cutting on the inside of those, which is important. You want it to cut on the inside because you want the outside to be nice and straight. Cut all the way, traverse all the way over, come out, and then it'll cut the outside of this. There are ways that you can adjust your, like you can manual path it if you want, and you can tell where it wants to go or where you want it to go. Or after you do autopath, if you change anything, the autopath traverse lines and everything will still be there. So I examine it, and if I want to change something, I'll just come up, click the undo, and it erases all of that. And then let's say we want to change where our lead in, lead outs are. So we come over here, draw lead in, lead out. I want the lead in on this right there. So I just click on it. Let's say we want it on there. Click on that so it's coming out, and then up here I want it right here. So now in theory, and this works about 50% of the time for me, it's probably something I'm doing, not the program. In theory, we select everything. If we hit autopath, it should use our lead in, lead outs as where it's going to start cutting, or where it's going to lead in, lead out. And there you go. So it started inside the circles where it normally would, and then it comes over to our lead in, lead out, moves around the whole entire thing, traverses, cuts the circles, comes out to where we put our lead in, lead out, cut the whole entire thing, traverse over, do all of that, and then come to that, cut the whole entire thing. So that makes it so we can now use it in the other program. So if we hit save, it'll just save our AutoPath on there. So it doesn't really do any value to us other than to update our save file, which we already just did a second ago. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up, what we have to do now is export this into a different format. So we come up to File, we come down to Export Path As, click that, and now shock mount video, you can see it's now saving as an ORD file. So we're going to click that. You can see it doesn't show our DXF file anymore. It's just our all the ORDs. So we're going to save it as whatever we want to call it, but as an ORD. Save that, and now we don't even need to use this program anymore. So we're going to exit out of there. Do you want to save? I'm not going to, because I like to have it saved without the AutoPath on it so I can adjust it. I make sure I save it right before I AutoPath every time. That way I can just adjust the program without the AutoPath in the way. So I'm going to click No. And now we don't need this anymore. We have all of those taken care of. So we're going to get rid of that too. I don't need to save it. So that was Flowpath 7. We're going to now go into FlowCut, and this is the program that you're going to use with the actual water jet. So we're going to click on that, wait for it to open, and I'm just going to kind of run you through a real quick way of turning this on, even though I am not actually currently at the water jet. But in FlowCut, we're going to open, and that's either this button right here up in the corner, or you can go to File, Open. And we are going to click on, and it's going to show us our ORD file. You could come down here and try to change the files, but it's only going to read our ORD file that we exported as. So we're going to click on that, we're going to hit Open, and now we have our drawing with our AutoPath up in this program. So there's not much we have to do in here. There's things we can do, like we can go and look at it, at a different view. We can make it 3D. Where's our 3D button? So we can do top view, we can orbit, make it 3D. We don't need to do any of that. We're just going to go back to top view, but we do need to figure out our thickness, and this is the thickness of the material that you are going to be using. So if I was doing a 2-inch thick piece of carbon, I would type in 2.0 for inch, so 2-inch, and then I would find carbon fiber in our material, which is right here, carbon fiber. So if I had a 2-inch thick piece of carbon fiber, which is a ton of layers, and I suggest never laying that much, but if I was doing that, those are the settings I'd have to do. What I'm going to do is just regular steel. And I'm not sure the difference between the AR400 and the 4130. I always click the 4130. And I know it is 0.25 inch thick. So I like to go 0.255 just to give me a little bit extra pressure to go over. Technically, I'm reading on my thickness 0.249, but I want a little extra pressure to make sure I go all the way through. So we have 0.255 for 1/4 inch thick steel. We have steel selected here. We want to keep the rest of these the same. Don't mess with those. And then we come down here and we go to our preview button. We click the preview. It'll say it's traveling outside of the cutting area. And that's, I think, just because right here, let's click no. I think right there just barely comes out, and that's why it's doing that. You do want to pay attention to that, because if you have something that's way on the outside of this cutting area, then you will be desperately messing everything up. So I'm going to say yes. Normally you want it a little bit inside, and I could go into the flow, what is it called? Flowpath. I could go in there, fix it so it's inside there, but it's minor enough that I'm not worried about it. So we still have our everything. So we click on that. We're going to hit yes in this case. All of this should be left alone. You shouldn't have to mess with this. We do want water. We do want abrasive during our cut. We want it offset on the outside corners. That means as it's following this, it's going to be on the, the water is not going to be right on the line. It's going to be on the inside, so you get your actual size. And everything else, yeah, just stay the same. So once we hit OK on this, it's going to actually show us exactly how it's going to cut. Now, I like to watch this whole thing, make sure it doesn't do anything funny. So it's showing us exactly, and it's showing exactly how far it's going. I believe this is in inches. So right now we're at 85 inches of cut in that. So it's going to be, this is going to be quite a long little cut. As you can see exactly where it's cutting. Looks perfect. So once that's done, you can come down here and you can kind of move this around to see wherever, be like, oh, halfway through something messed up. Let me double check where that is. You can slow it down. So if you hit play, you click slow. It'll slow it down a ton. You can fast forward. You can pause it. You can stop it. So it's pretty neat to be able to watch that. So I always watch that just as a reference. Click escape on that, and then you need to come over, make sure our thickness is correct again, or still, and we have the right stuff, right material selected, I guess. Then we come down, we click run machine. It'll tell us that just because of those two small spots that are just barely outside. Normally you wouldn't want this, you'd hit no and you'd go and fix it, but I'm going to click yes, and this will bring us into our cutting screen. So as you can see over here it changed, down here it changed. So right here controls our Z axis. So this creates our Z home and our up and down. So if we click up, it'll actually physically move our cutting head up on the water jet. If you click down, it'll physically move down, and you can set home right there. We do not mess with this very much. For what you're going to be doing, don't mess with this. You're going to be looking for your Y and X axis, which is this. And so what you're going to do is you're going to move your, or you're going to install your actual piece, in this case my 1/4 inch piece of steel. I'll install that, come over, and I will move my cutting head directly into this corner. I can't do that right now, obviously, because I'm not at the water jet, but I would. And then once you get it directly, when you get it into the corner of your item, so say I have a 12 inch by 12 inch piece of steel, I would have it laid out to come this full 12 inch by 12 inch, and then I'd put my cutting head right in the corner there, and I would then come set my height with your height gauge. It should be on the water jet there. It's 0.10, I think, 1/100th of an inch. Set that as close as you can, and this is something you'll have to kind of go through with an instructor when you are actually there. And then you click home, set current position as user home. Once you have it right there, you want to save user home to list. When you hit OK, it'll bring up another menu of what you want to save it as. We have 1 to 10 positions. I'll just click 1 and I'll put Josh. When I hit OK, I can then move my cut head anywhere I want. And if I come back over here, click that, and then go to position and go to Josh, when I hit OK, it'll move wherever I have it directly back to where I just set it, which would be this corner. So after you have all that done, you want to check, make sure that you're not going to run into anything with the cutting head, because usually you will have to have weights, you know, holding your metal down or your carbon fiber down or whatever you're doing. You then, there's 2 things you can do. One thing I like to do is I like to just run the cutting head all the way up and around the outside of my actual cutting points. And you'll see it'll actually create some dots on the screen of where the cutting head is in reference to the actual thing. I run it around, make sure it's not going to run into anything. If it looks like it's going to get within close or within range of hitting something, I then will move that weight or whatever I'm doing and start over. So I go around all outsides, and I count that as kind of a dry run. That's weird. So anyway, or you can do that, which is relatively quick and it's manual, or you can come up to cutting. No, it's not cutting. Oh, it is cutting. Go up to cutting, and it's not going to let me, but you'd come down and you'd hit dry run. Click on dry run. It'll then start the machine. The machine will actually go and actually do the whole entire cutting process. Cut everything out without actually cutting. You won't have to have the pump on. You won't have to have water on. You won't have garnet flowing. It'll just move where it's at. And always have your hand over the escape or the space bar. Those are your cancel button. So if you end up canceling, or if you think it's going to run into something during a dry run, if you hit escape or you hit space bar, it'll stop the whole machine where it's at. So do that before the cutting head runs into a weight or anything. And then you have to restart it. But it'll run through the whole entire thing without cutting anything. And then once you're happy with that, come back, click go to position, hit OK, it'll bring it back. It'll end wherever it was and it'll bring it back to here. Once that's done and you're ready to cut, you come over, you click pump, turn pump on. Click that, it will have 2 stages. It'll start up immediately and go to 30,000 psi or something. And then you need to wait until it goes to the second stage and it hits 55,000 psi. That you can see on the back side of our water jet. There's a big gauge there. You need to watch that gauge to make sure it gets up to 55. The pump will be running, and then you pretty much just come up and you hit the play button right here. And once you hit that play button, it'll start cutting. So when you click the play button, make sure you're standing in front of the computer the whole entire time from then on with your hand at a ready to hit escape or spacebar. If there's going to be any issues, you want to hit escape or spacebar. It'll stop everything. So you click on that. Now it's starting to cut everything, and you're good to go. And then you just kind of hang out and wait until the cut's done. And this isn't accurate at all, but before you cut, you can look down in this bottom right-hand corner. It says estimated time. For some reason, it's telling me it's 14 seconds, or 14 minutes. But I believe this would probably be about a 55 to 60 minute cut. But you can kind of judge how long the cut's going to be when you get into this screen just by the estimated time. Unfortunately, it does not count down. It just tells you the estimated time for the whole entire cut. So that way you can look at it if you're right before lunch. You can make sure you have enough time to cut the whole entire thing. And I always say if it's a 20-minute cut and you have exactly 20 minutes to cut it and no more time, don't do the cut. Wait. Give yourself extra time. I'd say give yourself an extra half hour, because there are times like after each one of these is cut out, you'll want to stop the machine, make sure everything's shut down, then you'll want to pull this piece out before it starts cutting this next piece, because it could disrupt, could pop up and move underneath your cut, and everything could have a lot of problems. So that's something you probably want to go over and instruct with an instructor right before you actually do your cut. But you can figure out how much time by this estimated time, how much time you're going to need. To figure out that plus, say, a half hour, and you'll be perfect. So that's pretty much the whole entire what I would do and how I would draw a thing on FlowCut. So thanks for watching.